Steve Keeley is a reporter who got this footage from somebody, a tourist who was on the second deck of a double-decker bus going through Philadelphia when these motorcyclists went by. He writes, watch as a tourist aboard the top level of a Philadelphia double-decker sightseeing bus records on the street next to Philadelphia City Hall. 8 p.m. last night, George Colony from Florida watched helplessly as a male on a motorcycle kicked in the back windshield where two kids were sitting in the car. Steve Keeley continues, watch as a tourist. Oh, sorry. I forgot to click this button. He had a gun. He means the motorcyclist who kicks in the windshield had a gun that fell out of his waistband as he jumped down off her car. He then headbutted her with the visor of his helmet as she fights back, despite him being armed and she being way outnumbered. She's an Uber Eats driver with two kids in the car because a babysitter is too costly. And we are going to watch the actual video, folks. So in response to this, my friend Cody, Donut Operator on Twitter and on YouTube, former police officer who does his own excellent commentary on these kinds of use of force events. If you're not following him on Twitter and subscribe to him on YouTube, you're doing it wrong, folks. Cody does great work. Very kind, generous guy. Donut says, I would have shot him. To which I responded, yes. Forcible and unlawful breach of highly defensible property, which we'll talk about in more detail, such as an occupied vehicle, is an excellent way to get lawfully shot. Well, not everyone agrees, because there was another response to Donut's Twitter post on this. And this guy says, you'd most likely be in jail, because that's not a situation where you can just shoot. And I'm tossing out that the video is in New York, where a gun would automatically get you a felony charge. Well, first of all, this is not in New York. So, I mean, this account, John, whoever he is, John with the numerics on the end, doesn't even understand the jurisdiction. So it's not in New York. It's in Philadelphia, which is in the state of Pennsylvania, which is adjacent to New York, but not New York. Different laws. And Donut responds, I might get arrested, but fearing for my child's life is going to go pretty far in court. Yeah, that's all true. And of course, you should assume you're going to get arrested if you shoot someone. That's just the base assumption you should have. And of course, you'd be defending yourself in this scenario and your children. So not just you, but not just self-defense, but defense of others as well. Others whom unquestionably you have a moral and legal obligation to defend from harm, right? They're your children. But fortunately, the defense narrative would be substantially stronger even than that, which is a pretty compelling defense narrative. So we're going to go take a look at the video, and I just have to find the video. I have it. Don't worry. And then we'll take a look at the very favorable Pennsylvania self-defense law provisions in the context of highly defensible property that would make this a pretty difficult self-defense situation to screw up for the woman driver. It's possible, theoretically, but it would be pretty tough. So let me pull this up here. And okay, so here we have, obviously taken with a cell phone, we have the, you know what, I'm going to put the little banner on the bottom of the screen for this Saturday's October 7th Law Self-Defense Live Advanced Class to remind everybody that time's running out, folks. Time is running out to take advantage of this opportunity. There we go. Law Self-Defense Advanced Class, Saturday, October 7th, lawofselfdefense.com/advanced. So here we have the video that was taken by the tourist from the top deck of a double-decker bus, and we see a car here on the right. That's the car that will be attacked, and we see the motorcyclist here. The motorcyclist right near the rear fender of the car with the white printing on the shirt, that's the bad dude. That's the dude who's going to smash through the windshield. So I'll go ahead and play this. There's no real audio, but you'll see him dismount his motorcycle, jump on the car, smash through the rear window by stomping on it. When he hops off the car, apparently a gun drops out of his waistband onto the street. So he's got to pick that up. Then the woman driver gets out of the car to confront him. And he headbutts her with his helmet. I believe she knocks his motorcycle over when he's remounting it, which, by the way, is very effective, folks. It's not hard to fall over on a stopped motorcycle if someone gives you a good shove. Something to keep in mind, perhaps maybe useful information sometime in the future. And you're rather defenseless when you're in the process of falling over on top of your motorcycle. Not a great fighting position. But he gets back on his bike and everybody goes about on their way. So let's go ahead and watch the video and explore. There goes the window. Comes the woman. He picks up his gun, putting it back in his waistband. Oh, headbutt. Hey, knocks him over. Yeah, I would not be getting into any fights sitting on top of my motorcycle. That's a bad plan. But obviously, this is not a very thoughtful individual. So we see he jumps up on the car, smashes in the rear window by stomping on it, and the window collapses into the car, where apparently there's two children sitting in the back seat. And the question is, could this woman have just shot that motorcyclist for engaging in that behavior? And of course, there is kind of a straight up self-defense, defense of others narrative, right? You're scared for your life. You're scared for your children's life based on this attack. So you're fearing an imminent threat of death. I mean, the imminence is there. He's smashing in the window. Threat of death or serious bodily injury to yourself or your children, assuming there's no legal duty to retreat. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. You'd have a very viable argument for the use of deadly force in self-defense. Remember, every claim of self-defense is defined by these 5 elements, folks: innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. Those are the targets of attack for a prosecutor because those elements are required to have a valid claim of self-defense, a justification for your use of, we're hypothesizing, deadly defensive force here. And they're all required, unless they're legally waived for some reason. But all the required elements are required, meaning if the prosecution can disprove any required element beyond a reasonable doubt, then your whole claim of self-defense collapses. You have no justification. And self-defense being a defense of confession and avoidance, you're not saying it wasn't me, I didn't do it. You're saying it was me, I did it, I shot that guy, but I did it in lawful self-defense. Well, if the lawful self-defense portion of that statement collapses, all that's left is, it was me, I shot that guy. That's just a confession. Walk away conviction for the prosecutor. And the prosecutor knows that. So if it's going to be a self-defense case, he's targeting one or more of these elements of self-defense. And it's the same elements in every state, folks, in DC, in Guam, every place American law applies. I don't know about non-American countries. I don't do my work there. So that would apply in straight up self-defense and defense of others. But the law does make special provisions, special allowances for the use of deadly defensive force that are different, relaxed, when your conduct in self-defense is in the context of highly defensible property. Now, these special provisions are often referred to as castle doctrine laws. That's not really correct. That's not a correct historical understanding of castle doctrine, but they are special provisions for the use of deadly force in defense of highly defensible property. Now, what do we mean by highly defensible property? It always includes your home. It often includes a place of business, and it often includes an occupied vehicle. And the context here is that there's an intruder into the highly defensible property. That's what you're defending against, an intruder into the highly defensible property. So they're intruding into your home, into your place of business, into your occupied vehicle. And the way most states deal with this is they create If that's the circumstance, your use of deadly defensive force was in the context of defending against an intruder into highly defensible property, they create a legal presumption that most of these elements have been satisfied. They're giving you the elements of self-defense in that circumstance. That's pretty nice. How many of those elements are they giving you? Well, for that, we need to take a look at Pennsylvania specific law on defense of highly defensible property. And these Pennsylvania provisions are pretty common across the U.S. I mean, defense of property law does vary a lot from state to state, much more so than does defense of persons law. But these kind of provisions we'll be looking at, defense of highly defensible property under Pennsylvania law, are fairly common across the states. Before we get to that, though, I do want to talk about the element of avoidance. So the element of avoidance is not one of those that's legally presumed to be satisfied when defending highly defensible property. So we should look at it separately from the others. And also because Pennsylvania has a very unusual, really a unique legal provision on this question of avoidance. So the element of avoidance has to do with whether or not you have a legal privilege to stand your ground, or whether you have a legal duty to retreat before you can use deadly force in self-defense. And until 2011, Pennsylvania was a duty to retreat state, at least before you could use deadly force in self-defense. If you were only using non-deadly force in self-defense, you did not have a legal duty to retreat. But before you could use deadly force in self-defense, you had a legal duty to retreat if safely possible. So let's imagine that was still the law here. In this scenario, would this woman have a legal duty to retreat? Well, first of all, you're only required to retreat if you can do so with complete safety and if it's physically possible. This woman's car is blocked in by these other vehicles. You're also not required to retreat and leave other innocents behind. She's got 2 kids in the car. So she's not required to get out of her car and walk away and leave the kids behind. It wouldn't even be practical for her to attempt to retreat from a fight carrying 2 kids with her. So if retreat is not possible with complete safety for everyone, then you don't have the legal duty to retreat. And that's complete safety, folks. You're not required to increase your jeopardy in an effort to retreat. So even under Pennsylvania's old duty to retreat law, there would have been no realistic legal duty for this woman to retreat, the driver to retreat under these circumstances. So avoidance would have been off the table just based on the facts that we're dealing with here. But in 2011, Pennsylvania, in any case, became a stand your ground state, but a stand your ground state with an odd legal provision. So in theory, you can stand your ground. You do not have a legal duty to retreat before you can use deadly force in self-defense, even if it's safely possible for you to retreat. You don't have that legal duty after 2011